Formula One has just concluded its F1 2025 testing here in Bahrain just this week, and there are some big takeaways to take out from this testing session. And in today's video, I'm just going to go over the biggest points and the biggest talking points and things to look out for heading into the F1 season coming up in just a few weeks. Now, testing showed a lot of useful stuff to us. We now know who's looking strong and who's looking weak. So I'm going to go through some of those big talking points, so let us get straight into it. So the first thing I would like to talk about is McLaren. Now, McLaren, I think, are currently on what they call a swing of momentum. Last season was a really good season for them. They had a championship contending car. If only they had good enough pace in the beginning, I think Norris could have maybe won that championship, the Drivers' Championship. But I think McLaren heading into this year have really good momentum, and now they are currently the favorites because going into testing they were the pre-favorites, and then during testing they showed some absolutely blinding pace. They had quick speed, they were fast, especially on the race simulation. And it just proves that I think McLaren are currently a step ahead in terms of their competition. And McLaren, I think, will definitely be heading out first probably when we get to Australia. So it'll be interesting to see what they can do. But at the moment, it's looking like McLaren are going to do really well. And, they don't have a perfect car as well. It's not perfect. There are some issues. They may have some balance issues, but at the same time, McLaren, when it's all hooked up, it's looked really quick, and they've not really necessarily put in quick times during testing, but just through race simulation and data, it shows that McLaren are just really quick heading into this year. So I think going into Australia, they will have a step ahead in terms of the competition, and it will be interesting to see what will happen going into Australia. The next thing I want to talk about is Red Bull. Now, Red Bull has had a very good era of regulation so far. They've done really well. They've won multiple championships with him and Max Verstappen, and they've just had a great last few seasons. 2022, 2023, 2024 had quite a bit of weakness, but I think they still came out with the Drivers' Championship, so that is a big thing for them. But going into this year, it's not really looking that great from what we've seen. Now, Red Bull have a new driver pairing with Max Verstappen and Liam Lawson, who's replacing Sergio Perez going into this year. And, Red Bull just aren't looking that good at the moment. Red Bull, I think, are maybe confidently, people are saying that they are the fourth best car on the grid behind McLaren, Ferrari, and Mercedes. Now, although Red Bull are struggling, there is a chance that they could absolutely dominate coming into Australia. That could be a possibility, but the way it's looking, it looks like McLaren have the upper hand. Now, Red Bull had big struggles. They had a huge water leak issue with Liam Lawson on day 2, which really impacted his running, which he had the whole day, I think. So that really ruined his running. And then on day 3, Verstappen, while he was running, he had a few spins and issues, which from what I've seen and what I've heard, he's not very happy with that kind of issue. So it's not looking great for them. I don't know if it's maybe just Adrian Newey leaving or any other issues, but they are just not doing well. And from after 2024 with that bogey last half where they were losing to McLaren and they were kind of starting to slip back a bit, it's starting to show a bit more. Now, we don't know if they're sandbagging or not. That could be a potential possibility, so we'll see about that. But I think going to Australia, they're not completely out of the mix. You can't count them out, but I think Red Bull is just a little bit behind Mercedes and Ferrari and then McLaren. So I think those 4 teams are already really close together, but I think there are some slight gaps that could maybe put Red Bull as the fourth quickest team overall heading into Australia. So the next thing I want to talk about is Williams. Now, Williams personally really shocked me when I saw them during the test. Last year was a really bad year. They didn't do as great as people were expecting. Compared to their 2023 season, it was not as good. They were doing really well in 2023, but then 2024 they kind of fell off a bit. So going into this year, not many people were, really supporting them. I wasn't really expecting them to have this leap of pace coming into testing. I thought they would maybe struggle a bit, but they proved me wrong. Williams, going into this testing, Carlos Sainz, who is their new driver who came from Ferrari, has set the fastest time in testing over the 3 days, which was really surprising. And him and Alex Albon looked on pace. They looked very good, very confident with the car, although there were maybe a few spins and offs for Sainz in the Williams, but apart from that, they looked very strong. And whenever it came to the final classification, they were always in the top 10. So I would not be surprised if they could come into Australia and they could be one of the daily point scorers, which is really good to see, I think, because Williams have been struggling in the back over the last few years. So for them to now finally have a big uptick in pace is really, really encouraging to see. And it's going to be really interesting to see what they can do, what Albon and Sainz could do. Easily one of the best driver pairings on the whole grid. So with that consistent drivers and with that car, they could potentially pull something out of the bag. And based on what I've seen, I personally think they could be in the best of the rest field along with Alpine and other cars. So I think they have done a really good job heading into the 2025 season. So going into Australia, it will be really interesting to see how they fare, especially against them and Alpine in Australia. So the final thing I want to talk about is Mercedes versus Ferrari. Now, these two teams are absolutely neck and neck going into 2025, and that is, I think, a really good thing. It's going to provide a lot more competition, and it's going to be probably one of the biggest things people are going to look out for. And I think it could also be a potential fight too. It could restart the fight from a few years back when it was Vettel versus Hamilton. Now we could be seeing Leclerc versus Russell, Hamilton versus Antonelli, those kinds of things, which could be really cool to see. But going into testing, Ferrari were also a really strong looking candidate. Loads of people thought that Ferrari could have potentially the best car on the whole grid and that they could be dominating going to 2025. But that didn't prove the case. Ferrari were strong, they were decent, but they weren't as quick as McLaren. And what really surprised everyone was the pace of the Mercedes. And Mercedes has usually struggled a lot during the last few years, and which is the whole reason why Hamilton himself left that team to join Ferrari. So now to see them bring an uptick of pace is going to be really interesting to see. Now a lot of people are debating whether or not it was because of the cool weather in Bahrain, because it was not unusually pretty cold there. So it will be, and Mercedes is known for running really well in the cold weather. So we don't know if it's based on cold or just maybe it's an actual pace and it's not like a blip of pace that just came randomly. It could be a actual legitimate pace that they're showing. And if it is, then we could be in for a very close fight between those two, because based on the race simulations, from the data people are seeing, Mercedes and Ferrari are pretty much neck and neck in terms of pace. Ferrari, of course, have the speed on the straights and out of the corners, while Mercedes have the speed going into the corners and through the corners. So those two with that kind of level of characteristics, I think it's just going to be neck and neck between those two. And if McLaren are out, if McLaren just disappear out in the front, then I think it'll be just exciting to see just Mercedes and Ferrari fighting out for the podium. And who knows, if McLaren aren't that far ahead, we could be seeing easily a 3, maybe 4-way with Red Bull joining in. for wins and for the championship, which is just going to be super exciting to see. But I think going into Australia, those two are just neck and neck, and you can easily bet on who's going to win, but no one knows who's going to win between the two or between all four, as it could easily be all neck and neck heading into Australia. So that's pretty much my biggest takeaways from testing. Let me know what you guys think are your biggest takeaways from testing. And that's pretty much it for this video. If you enjoyed and watched the whole video, thank you so much. Please like and subscribe, and goodbye until the next one.